3,000 years ago, almost nobody on earth worshipped one god. The Egyptians had hundreds. The Greeks had 12 major ones and hundreds of minor ones. The Mesopotamians had a divine bureaucracy so complex it required professional scribes to keep track of it. The Canaanites, the Hittites, the Persians, the Romans, the Norse, the Celts, the Aztecs, the people of the Indus Valley, all of them, many gods. Today, roughly 57% of the human population, over 4.5 billion people, worships one god, exclusively, formally, as a matter of religious conviction that shapes every aspect of their lives. That is the single most dramatic shift in the history of human religious thought. And it happened in a few centuries, in a small corner of the ancient Near East, starting with a group of people small enough that their entire tribal genealogy fits in a single book. How? How did one god beat 1,000? The easy answer is, because monotheism is true, and truth wins. But that is not a historical answer. That is a theological one, and this video is doing history. The historical answer is stranger, more contested, more interesting, and in some ways more compelling than the theological one. Because when you actually look at why monotheism spread, what it offered that polytheism did not, what problems it solved that polytheism could not, what it did to the people and the empires that adopted it, the picture that emerges is not simply a better idea triumphing over worse ones. It is a perfect storm of theology, politics, psychology, and historical accident that produced the most consequential religious transformation in human history. And it is still unfinished. Before you can understand why monotheism won, you have to understand what it was competing against. And polytheism was not primitive superstition waiting to be replaced by a more sophisticated idea. It was a highly functional system that solved real problems in sophisticated ways. The problem of the world's complexity. The ancient world was full of forces that human beings could not control and could not fully understand. The Nile flooded, or it did not. The rain came, or it did not. The harvest succeeded, or it failed. Disease struck, or it passed. Enemies attacked, or they did not. These forces were real, powerful, and apparently independent of each other. They did not seem to be coordinated by a single will. The storm did not seem to consult with the drought before both arrived in the same season. Polytheism mapped this complexity with elegant precision. You did not have one god responsible for everything. You had a god for each domain, and the domains had their own politics, their own rivalries, their own alliances, their own independent interests. When the harvest failed and the sea was also rough, you were not dealing with one god who had inexplicably decided to make everything bad simultaneously. You are dealing with two independent divine powers, each responding to different causes, each requiring different approaches. This was not less rational than monotheism. It was a different rationality, one that took the observable independence of natural forces as evidence for the independence of the divine powers behind them. The problem of social integration. Polytheistic systems were also extraordinarily effective at social integration. When two communities came into contact through trade, through conquest, through migration, their gods could be identified with each other. Zeus is Jupiter, Ares is Mars, Athena is Minerva. The Romans called this interpretatio Romana, the practice of identifying local gods encountered during conquest with Roman equivalents, bringing them into a shared divine world rather than forcing a choice between them. This made polytheism astonishingly flexible. Conquered peoples could keep their gods. The conquerors could add local gods to their own pantheon. Religious coexistence was structurally built into the system. The Roman Empire at its height functioned as a vast religious marketplace. Temples to dozens of different gods stood in the same cities. Mystery cults from Egypt and Persia operated alongside traditional Roman state religion. Individual Romans could participate in multiple cults simultaneously. finding different things in different traditions without any sense of contradiction. This flexibility was polytheism's greatest strength. It was also, ultimately, the opening through which monotheism moved, the first monotheists and what made them different. The origins of Israelite monotheism are among the most debated questions in the entire history of religion. Because the Hebrew Bible itself presents evidence that Israelite monotheism was not something that existed from the beginning, it was something that developed. The earliest layers of the Hebrew Bible do not clearly claim that other gods do not exist. They claim that Israel's God is the greatest of the gods, El Elyon, the Most High God. They warn the Israelite people against worshiping other gods, not because other gods do not exist, but because other gods are not Israel's gods, and worshiping them constitutes a fundamental betrayal of the covenant relationship. This early position, worship one God, while acknowledging that others may exist, is called monolatry by scholars. It is categorically different from strict monotheism, which asserts that only one God exists at all. The full philosophical monotheism that would eventually produce the theology of Maimonides, the Nicene Creed, and the Quranic declaration, "There is no God but God," that took centuries to develop. The Babylonian exile and the transformation. The most transformative moment in the development of Israelite monotheism was catastrophic. In 587 BCE, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Jerusalem, burned the temple, and deported the Israelite leadership to Babylon. This was, by any measure, a disaster, and it raised a theological question that demanded an answer. If YHWH was the God of Israel, and Israel had been defeated and exiled, what did that mean? Either YHWH had been defeated by the Babylonian gods, which the prophets categorically refused to accept, or YHWH was not merely the God of Israel, but the God of everything, who was using the Babylonian Empire as an instrument of judgment on a people who had failed to live up to their covenant obligations. The second option required a complete theological reframing. YHWH was not a national deity. YHWH was the creator and sovereign of the entire universe, who had chosen to work through a particular people, but whose authority extended over all nations and all gods. The gods of Babylon were not rivals to YHWH. They were either non-existent or subordinate. This theological reframing, driven by political catastrophe, is the moment strict monotheism crystallizes in the Hebrew tradition. Isaiah and the satirical demolition of idols. The prophet known as Second Isaiah, writing during the Babylonian exile, delivers the most philosophically precise attack on polytheism in any ancient literature. He describes idol-making with deliberate irony. A craftsman cuts down a tree. He uses half of it to cook his food and warm himself by the fire. With the other half, he makes a god and worships it. The satire is pointed. You made it, with your hands, from a piece of wood. The other piece is smoke in your fireplace. How is the piece you worship different from the piece you burned? This is not a theological argument. It is a philosophical challenge to the basic coherence of the idol cult. And it marks the moment when Israelite theology stops merely claiming that YHWH is greater than other gods and starts arguing that the other gods simply are not there. The political explanation for monotheism's development catastrophe forces theological reframing, explains the origins. It does not explain the spread. Why did monotheism, once developed, spread so dramatically and so rapidly compared to the polytheistic traditions it replaced? Several answers, each partially correct. The moral clarity. Polytheistic systems had genuine difficulty producing a coherent, universal morality. When each domain had its own god, and the gods themselves engaged in behavior that would be considered immoral by human standards, Zeus's sexual violence, Ares's love of slaughter for its own sake, the capriciousness of the Olympians in general, the gods did not provide a reliable moral model for human behavior. You could imitate the virtues of specific gods in their domains. You could not derive a universal moral code from the behavior of a divine assembly that frequently behaved worse than the humans worshipping it. A single, perfectly good God, a God whose goodness was not one attribute among others, but the very nature of the divine, provided something polytheism structurally could not. A moral order grounded in the nature of ultimate reality itself. What is good is not good because the gods happen to prefer it. What is good because God is good, and God is the ground of all reality, and the moral order is therefore written into the structure of existence. This is the foundation on which both Jewish law and later Christian and Islamic ethics were built. The problem of theodicy and monotheism's gamble, but this strength was also monotheism's most dangerous liability. If there is one God, perfectly good and all-powerful, and that God is responsible for everything, then why does suffering exist? Why do innocent children die? Why do good people experience catastrophic injustice while evil people prosper? Polytheism had no problem here. Bad things happen because the god of storms, and the god of disease, and the god of war are doing what they do, and they are not perfectly good beings whose goodness you have to defend. They are powerful beings with their own interests. Monotheism staked its credibility on the goodness of God, and then had to explain every earthquake, every plague, every murdered child within a theological framework that insisted the God responsible for it all was perfectly good. The Book of Job is the most honest engagement with this problem in any religious literature, and it ends not with an answer, but with an encounter. God speaks from the whirlwind. The answer to Job's suffering is not an explanation, it is a presence. This is either profoundly satisfying or profoundly evasive, depending on what you are looking for. The personal relationship. Monotheism also offered something polytheism rarely did, a direct personal relationship with the ultimate power in the universe. In polytheistic systems, the personal relationship was with specific gods, local, specialized, accessible through specific rituals and specific priests. The ultimate power behind the cosmos, the primordial chaos, the fate that even the gods obeyed was not personal. It did not know you. It did not care about you specifically. Monotheism claimed that the ultimate power in the universe, the creator of everything, the ground of all reality, knew your name, counted the hairs on your head, was moved by your prayer, was present in your suffering. This claim is either the most audacious theological invention in human history or the most important truth ever spoken. Either way, it was irresistible to millions of people who had previously been in relationship only with lesser divine powers. Theology explains why monotheism was compelling. It does not fully explain why it won. Because in the ancient world, being compelling was not enough. The mystery cults of Isis and Mithras were compelling. The philosophical schools of Epicurus and Zeno were compelling. None of them conquered the Roman Empire. Christianity did. And the mechanism of that conquest was not primarily spiritual, it was political. In 312 CE, Constantine won the Battle of Milvian Bridge and attributed his victory to the Christian God. We have explored this in the Christian symbols video. What matters here is the political consequence. Constantine's conversion or strategic alliance with Christianity. The historical debate continues gave the Christian Church access to imperial resources for the first time in its history. Church buildings, legal recognition, state funding, the patronage of the most powerful political institution on earth. Within a century, what had been a minority religion practiced in house churches and catacombs was the official religion of the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire, at its height, covered most of the known world. The Edict of Thessalonica, 380 CE. When Constantine's successors finished what he started, the Emperor Theodosius issued the Edict of Thessalonica, declaring Nicene Christianity the only legitimate religion of the Roman state. Polytheism, which had been the religious framework of Roman civilization for over 1,000 years, was now officially heresy. Temples were closed, sacrifices were banned. The Great Library of Alexandria was burned by whom exactly is disputed, but the destruction of pagan intellectual culture was systematic enough that within a generation, the practical capacity to practice traditional Greco-Roman religion was significantly damaged. The philosophical sophistication of ancient polytheism did not lose a theological argument. It lost a political battle. And once the political battle was lost, the infrastructure, the temples, the trained priests, the maintained traditions, the intellectual lineages collapsed with remarkable speed. Islam and the second monotheist expansion. 3 centuries after Christianity became the religion of Rome, Islam emerged in 7th century Arabia and expanded with even greater speed. Within 100 years of Muhammad's death in 632 CE, the Islamic Caliphate extended from Spain to Central Asia, one of the fastest territorial expansions in human history. Islam did not simply spread by conquest, though conquest was part of it. It spread because it offered something, the simplest, most direct version of monotheism, yet formulated. No trinity to explain. No incarnation to defend. Just one God, one final prophet, one book. La ilaha illa Allah. There is no God but God. 5 words, spoken once with sincere conviction. That is the entirety of the conversion requirement. The theological simplicity was itself a form of compelling force. Monotheism won, but it did not win completely. And the evidence of what it failed to fully replace is visible everywhere in the traditions that claim to replace polytheism. The saints. We explored this in the saints video. The human need for specific, local, personal, divine figures. Figures who specialize, who have stories, who have personalities, who can be petitioned for specific help, did not disappear when the Roman pantheon was formally closed. It transferred gradually and organically to the saints. Nicholas for sailors and children, Christopher for travelers, Jude for hopeless causes, Barbara for artillery, Joseph for people trying to sell their houses. The specialization is identical to the divine specialization of polytheism. The mechanism of petition is identical. The local shrines, the feast days, the miraculous interventions structurally, the saint cult performs the same function the God cult performed. The Roman Church acknowledged this deliberately and explicitly, as Pope Gregory I's letter to Augustine of Canterbury makes clear, and incorporated it. The Protestant Reformation's rejection of the saints was, in part, an attempt to complete the monotheist project that the Roman Church had left half-finished. Strip away the quasi-polytheistic saint cult, return to the pure, unmediated relationship with one God. The results were instructive. The populations that adopted strict Calvinist or Reformed theology, which most rigorously removed the saints and all associated intercession, showed the highest rates of anxiety about salvation in early modern Europe. The direct, unmediated relationship with an infinite, perfectly holy God was, for many people, not comforting. It was terrifying. The saints had been buffering something real, Hinduism and the question of incomplete victory. In India, the monotheist expansion did not win. Islam spread significantly across the subcontinent. Christianity established significant communities in South India from at least the 4th century CE. But Hinduism, with its philosophical flexibility, its capacity to absorb rather than exclude, its refusal to draw hard boundaries between one God and many, survived and remained the majority tradition. And in doing so, Hinduism preserved something that strict monotheism could not easily contain: the intuition that the divine is not adequately captured by any single image, any single name, any single theological formula. The diversity of Hindu practice is sometimes described as a weakness, too fragmented, too inconsistent, lacking the clarity of monotheism. It can equally be understood as a deliberate, principled refusal to reduce the infinite to the expressible. The persistence of animism and folk religion. Even within the monotheistic traditions, at the popular level, the world has never fully stopped being enchanted. The evil eye, the lucky charm, the protective amulet, the saint whose intercession you invoke, the specific tree that has been considered holy in a village for longer than anyone can remember, the moment you knock on wood without knowing why. These practices exist in communities that formally subscribe to strict monotheism. They persist despite formal prohibition. They persist because the human need for a world populated by meaningful, responsive, personal forces, a world that sees you and responds to you and can be negotiated with, is older than any theological system and more fundamental than any formal doctrine. Monotheism won the theological argument. It did not fully win the human heart. The question of monotheism versus polytheism is sometimes presented as a completed debate, something settled in the ancient world and only of historical interest today. It is not settled. It is being argued right now in forms its original participants would not recognize. The New Atheism. The philosophical critique of monotheism that emerged most forcefully in the early 21st century, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, Daniel Dennett was in many ways a continuation of the ancient debate. Their central argument, a single, all-powerful, all-knowing, perfectly good God, cannot be reconciled with the observable features of the universe. The problem of evil is not a puzzle monotheism has an adequate answer to. This is not a new argument. It is the argument of the pagan philosophers who rejected monotheism in late antiquity, the argument of Celsus, who wrote the first major philosophical critique of Christianity in the 2nd century CE, pointing out exactly the theodicy problem that the new atheists would rediscover 18 centuries later, the spiritual but not religious movement. The fastest-growing religious category in Western surveys is non-people who identify with no formal religious tradition. But surveys of this population consistently show that the majority believe in something, a spiritual dimension, a higher power, a force or presence that exceeds the merely material. This is not monotheism in the formal theological sense. It is not polytheism in the ancient sense. It is something that defies easy categorization, a residual sense that the world is not fully explained by matter and energy alone, without commitment to any specific theological description of what more there is. The historian of religion, Karen Armstrong, has argued that this instinct is what religion has always been pointing at, and that the specific theological formulations, whether monotheist or polytheist, were always secondary vehicles for pointing at something that exceeds all of them. If she is right, then monotheism's victory was never really a victory of one theological position over another. It was a victory of one cultural and political configuration that better served the historical moment. And the thing it was pointing at was there before the argument started. 3,000 years ago, almost nobody worshipped one God. Today, more than half the human race does. That shift from a world of many gods to a world organized around one is the most consequential transformation in the history of human religious thought. It shaped the moral framework of Western civilization. It provided the theological foundation for the concept of universal human dignity. It made possible the idea that all human beings, regardless of tribe or nation or social status, stand in the same relationship to the same ultimate reality. These are not small things, but the victory was never complete. The saints multiplied beneath the monotheist canopy. The evil eye bead hung in the windows of people who prayed 5 times a day. The sacred tree in the village was still avoided at night. The old gods retreated, but did not disappear. They transformed, went underground, resurfaced in different forms in different centuries. And the philosophical critique of monotheism, the problem of evil, the impossibility of defining a being that exceeds all definition, the suspicion that the simplicity of one God is purchased at the cost of the world's actual complexity has never been fully answered. Monotheism won. The question it answered, and the questions it opened, have not finished generating history. The argument between one and many is at least 3,000 years old. It will not be over soon.